Okay, welcome everybody to the July meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Bronxville. I am Charles Law, and in the absence of our chairman and our vice chairman tonight, I will be acting as chairman of the meeting. On my left, we have Jane Regan. On the far right, Greg Jackno. And to my immediate right is John Brown. So because there are four of us tonight, three votes are required to carry a variance. We have really four things on the schedule tonight. Now, the first one, which is 41 and 43 Sagamore, we are going to, because they're very similar, almost identical as far as I could tell, we're going to do the presentation all at once. Now, if there are some people who want to speak to one of the projects or the other, that's fine. Then I will propose two resolutions and we'll vote on both of those. So why don't we get started with the presentation for the Sagamore projects.
Members of the Commission, thank you very much for meeting with us. I'm Richard Gonzalez. I'm the architect for both applications of 41 and 43 Sagamore Road. I am here to present the project for my clients. We're actually neighbors because I actually live about 100 feet away from this location. And about a year from this date, they came to me because I actually did my rear elevated deck several years ago. And to much fanfare of my neighbors, everyone is always raised about the work that I've done. And they said, well, Richard, we might have a similar project. Why don't you help us? So here we are. I told them because of the site conditions and the age of the buildings that we will actually have to go through a variance process, and we would like to showcase to you the design aspects of the project, but also what I wanted to do is give you a little bit more personal insight and introduce you to my two clients. And I wanted to introduce Fred Gauthier, who actually is the owner of 43 Sagamore Road. He has a brief presentation he would like to go through.
That's fine. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Fred Gauthier. So my last name might elicit a Frenchism. Yes, it's not a coincidence. I was born and raised in France, lived in England, Italy, and Switzerland, and then finally landed in New York 20 years ago, in Manhattan mostly. And then 3 years ago, my wife and I moved to Bronxville. We have two daughters, ages 12 and 14, that attend the Bronxville school. And we're excited to be presenting this project with our neighbors, John and Maura, who have moved next door to us in the last couple of years and are also as equally excited as we are about doing this project collectively. So it is, as you said, they look pretty identical because they are essentially a joint project. We live in townhouses on Sagamore that are symmetric houses. It's almost freaky when you go from one house to the next because they are built exactly identically but symmetrically, so everything is in opposites, even though they are almost identical. It is kind of interesting to go in the neighbor's house, but we wanted to be, we're kind of excited about enhancing the value of our houses and the use of our houses because we have limitations in well, I'll go through a few of the limitations with the current setup of the houses and why we explored the creation of this deck and why we're here today. So what I would like to do, I don't know if there's slides that can move or, what's that? Oh, okay. So yeah, maybe on the next slide. These are the main points I want to cover. I won't be long. One is the context and rationale for creating this deck. The second is certain of the aspects that have been, that we had in mind when designing this with our architect. Some of the mitigations on some of the issues that were sort of front of our mind and certainly, okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I'll. And it's some of the issues that I'll walk through quickly. You can move on to the next slide. So this is Sagamore today. So this is the front of Sagamore. It's a row of townhouses, all kind of in the old English style, built about 100 years ago. There's a green space that de facto is a communal living space for all of the houses there, although it's parceled out in private properties. But it's enjoyed collectively by all the townhouses that live around it. Each house has a front patio, which is quite small. So the middle picture, it gives you a glimpse of when the Gautiers sit down at the table on a nice day, it sits 4 people, no more, and probably less is better. And the third picture on the right gives you an aerial view of our patio, as well as John and Moira's at 41 Sagamore, we're 43 Sagamore, and gives you a sense of the limited space that's available in the front. On the next slide, this is the back of the property. So this is from the second floor of 43, and you see how the land is laid out. So big picture, it's essentially a parking lot. It is a place where we store our garbage. It is a place where we store bikes under covers. It is a place where the AC condensators are. There is a public walkway that divides the property. So where all the garbage cans and so forth are, that is our joint private property between 41 and 43. Where the sidewalk is kind of divided, that's actually the demarcation line between 41 and 43. So then there's this public walkway, a railing, and then there's land on the other side which belongs to 41 and 43 as well. 41 is essentially where you see the stones aligned on the top left of the screen. That's the outer contour of 41. And then where it loops around to this planter in front of the car, that is the property of 43 Sagamore. It's actually equal terrain. The picture's a bit distorted. That's courtesy of the iPhone, but it's basically it's 2 square areas. The picture on the right gives you sort of a ground level view of the same layout. And basically, it's the land itself is very underutilized. It's a lot of weeds. It's essentially a parking lot with a lot of kind of basic utilities for the houses on Sagamore. And I think, well, before we move to the next slide, I think that's sort of the premise for why this project we're thinking about it the way we are. There's not an easy way to develop at the ground level. So one, the topography is a bit unique because it's very slanted. Like you can see that in the second picture, so difficult to develop a level area. There's a public walkway that basically sections the property in 2. And then thirdly, you have utilities. Oh, that one there. Thank you.
When you say public walkway, what do you mean by that?
So this walkway here?
You own your home. I think I know what you mean, but I'm just wondering if you do. You own your home, obviously, which is the wall here on the picture on the left, and then you say you own the property beyond that where the car is sticking out, right? So what about that parcel in the middle?
So this is the walkway I'm talking about. That's a public easement.
You're talking about an easement?
Yes, sorry.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought you were talking about.
And the property line stops for both houses right here in front of the car and wraps around here. So this is sort of the other rectangle that's completely unused.
Does the easement prohibit you from building out those patios further or whatever those back things are? Are you allowed to do that, or you're not allowed to do that with the easement?
I actually don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we have to consider is, can what you're asking to do be achieved in any other way? And so this is why we're asking this question.
That's what we're talking
I mean, for us, I mean, aside from the expense of doing something that is not ground level, there are a lot of practicalities that are difficult. The other thing that I'll mention is that there's utilities. So for example, the manhole here that is right next to the car is actually on the property of 43. So even if we wanted, say, to build out a fenced area, it's not really practical in that there are a number of public uses from a utility perspective that prevents that.
And I can dive into that detail when we look at the architecture.
Okay.
So on the next slide, this is the sketch of what we are proposing. So again, it's a twin project for houses that are symmetric. So it gives you a cohesive design. It's symmetrical, we picked Richard specifically because he had done such a great job 5 years ago on his own house, which is on Beech Tree Lane, whatever it is, 50 yards away from where we live. And so he was our first and last call in terms of architects because he had a style that was respectful of and showed an understanding of the architectural style, and we wanted something that would blend in well and that was well thought out and cohesive with the existing structure, so we don't have an eyesore of a build out as sometimes happens, although fortunately not too often in Bronxville.
Beech Tree Lane is the road that bisects Sagamore and Kensington,
That's correct.
and you live there?
On the next slide, this is and Richard will go in more detail, but this gives you a sense of the actual patio. So it is recessed from the property line. The overall surface for each of the properties is roughly 233 square feet. When you compare that, so in proportion to the houses are about 2,700 square feet, give or take. So it's under 10% of the surface of the square footage of the houses, so it's not out of proportion with the size of the house.
Was that the case when you bought the house, or has that changed? The ratios and has the patio, the outdoor space changed since you bought the house?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you bought the house knowing, okay.
With the patio in front, you mean?
Got it, yes.
Yes, yeah. And from a proportions perspective, like the house we're looking at here, which is on Beech Tree Lane, like the combined deck for the two houses would be about the size of that patio area for a single house. So it is more modest than the square footage of most of the outdoor patio areas that other houses on Kensington and Beech Tree Lane have currently. On the next slide, this was something that is dear to, I think, everybody's heart, both on Sagamore, Kensington, and Beech Tree Lane, and it's the issue of privacy. So this is today, if I'm in my dining room or I'm making a cup of coffee, this is what I see, which is probably unbeknownst to most of my neighbors, I stare right into their patios, their gardens, and the plan to build out a horizontal surface with a railing around that obstructs the views is done in part for us to obstruct because we're not particularly interested in their daily lives, and I'm sure they're not interested in us, peering into their daily lives. And we've thought about this long and hard because I think we want to do a design that works for everybody, not just for us. And aside from the railing that will go around, we'll probably have plantings to obstruct views further and accommodate it, the wishes of our neighbors that to avoid having a project that seems or feels intrusive to their daily lives. On the next slide, and I'll wrap up shortly, there's the issue of parking. So this is a private road which is privately owned by 3 houses on Sagamore. So John and Maura at 41 Sagamore own half of it, and 2 other houses, our immediate neighbors, Jane and Fabio own a plot, and then another house on Sagamore, both of which gave letters of support, own the remaining quarter of that road. And those are deeded parking spots. So there are 2 parking spots. There's one, the red car you see here on the right. There is an empty space where a 4th car goes in front of that car. And then you've got 2 more deeded parking spots further down on that private road. And then the cars that are on the left, those were carved out many, many years ago. It's hard to find like the records, but I think those were carved out not as part of the road, but as part of the yards of Kensington properties to have an additional 2 parking spots there. And it's a pretty crowded, we don't have a car there. We just observe while we're making coffee how the acrobatics of getting in and out of this driveway. It is pretty packed, and one of the concerns that our immediate neighbors who provided support was just don't make it worse with the deck. And so the pillars that would support the deck, we have yet to see with a structural engineer where they would be positioned, but we want them essentially as recessed, as structurally responsible as we can be, but away from the cars to not intrude. At any rate, they will be on 43 and 41 land. They will not be on anybody else's land, but we are very accommodating with the maneuvers that have to be done in the morning and the evening when people go and come back from work. And so we don't want to add to the congestion. So those will be receded. In the plan that Richard was going to talk about, we are essentially putting 1 pillar in front of this car here, and that would be the one most to the side. So that would be, if you will, you would have one here, you would have one in the middle, and then a third on the left. But I think Richard's drawings will explain that better than I can with this magic pen. Last slide is around public utilities. It's probably the least interesting one for us, but is probably an important one for the town. The garbage removal will remain the same. You will just have an overhead deck that the staff will go under. It'll be more protected. The manhole will not be affected because the deck is receded. And so Con Edison, when they need to come and check out utilities issues, will not have their day-to-day changed.
Where is that manhole? I'm sorry, I see it in the picture. Where is that manhole
So
relative?
this was in front of the maybe the previous.
One of the cars.
One of the cars, right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's all electric. And then finally, for water evacuation, we will collect our own. There is a basin under both the planter and this public walkway. There's a very large basin. In the appendix, this was a big 2005. I think 2005 was the year that all the Sagamore houses collectively built this because I think there were water drainage issues at the time. At any rate, we will be collecting the rainwater from the deck. And I think we've been told that we will have to have our own, individually for each property, a basin as a receptacle for all the water runoff. So from that perspective, nothing will change. And I think, let me just see here. Yeah, I have a few takeaways, so maybe on the next slide, and then I'll pass it over to Richard. Again, from a design perspective, we want to do something that's respectful of the existing structures that are there. So it's, as much as possible, we want to have something that's cohesive and well thought through, and is respectful of the history of the neighborhood. Size-wise, we feel it's in proportion to the size of the properties at around, it's under 10% of the square footage of the properties. And again, it's about half for each property, half the size of all the outdoor patio areas of neighboring houses. We'll do our utmost to mitigate any concerns around privacy, be it through architectural features or plantings we need to add to really minimize the impact, if any, on our neighbors. And it really, at the end of the day, I think it really spruces up the neighborhood. Today, it's a parking lot with garbage cans, and I think it'll look a lot nicer for everyone. So why don't I stop here? Because I've probably gone over, and I'll let Richard go through technicalities. Thank you.
Paul, can you switch over to the architectural drawings if you have that easy? Accessible? I have mine. Thank you. Thank you. Again, let's start from here, Paul. So just very quickly, just going to the project site, we're actually on the map, if this is the actually Sagamore building complex where we have Beech Tree and Sagamore Road, and 41 and 42 are literally right next to each other. It'll be these two properties that we're looking for at. Next slide. And in essence to what Fred was saying, it's a very tricky site because of the sloped terrain. When the houses were built back in 1915, again, it's part of a complex that was done by the William Van Duzer and the architect William Bates. They were looking at a new sort of townhouse model complex, which was very, sort of ingenuitive at its time. But again, it had to be tight, complex. The goal was, how could we reduce the size of the home to make it more efficient and more usable for the common day person who actually has to work in the city, and these were it. Many articles have been written about this, and looking at how they actually sit within the site and how people utilize it is very interesting. So these images here are pretty much what the house looked like today. In this cross-section, there's a scaled person there from the street. You can see that there is a really sort of a gradient slope by the time you get to the rear yard. To get to the back, you actually have to go through the ground floor down to the basement and actually access that back way. What we were looking at and studying is looking at how we could propose a better utilized outdoor space in the rear. Not in the front, but in the rear where it's less obtrusive to the passersby from the street. We're looking at actually an encroachment of more or less just a little bit over than 5 feet from the original foot line of the property wall, which is actually right here. Paul, can you go to the next? And again, in looking at the demolition plan, the elevated deck made a lot more sense as with the points that Fred was saying. There's a lot of stuff going on back there in terms of utility, parking, and various different aspects in the rear of the property. The best option that we were looking is, instead of putting everything at grade, why don't we raise it up? It just makes a lot more sense. So that way we keep away from any of those elements, disturb it as minimal as possible, but yet maintain the outdoor uses program adjacent to the ground floor. So in the demolition plan, in terms of the proposal, rather than excavating the entire rear yard, we're just looking at probing certain locations to put our columns, and then from there raise it up and actually utilize this space here where we're actually going to knock out the existing window to actually annex the outdoor deck to the existing dining room. It just makes a lot more sense programmatically rather than going through many different levels trying to get to that space for your morning coffee. Next slide, please. So in the new construction plan, as you can see, there are new columns implemented that's elevating it up. We're keeping all those elements there. So what we do know is there are utility lines such as a stormwater drainage system that was done several years ago. There's a manhole issue. All that are elements that we wanted to keep away. But by maintaining the deck up here, we wanted to just maintain almost like a screen element between these two neighbors to utilize their spaces adjointly, but not really disturb the other things that are going around in the rear. Next slide, Paul. This section is key. This is existing and this is proposed. This is the elevation of what's there now. As you can see, you see the scale figure here? There's a lot of different elevations going up to this property line. So we did look at an option to say, well, what if we were to look at the confines of putting in a deck at that elevation? The problem is we're going to be disturbing all these elements that's existing right here. It just didn't make sense. Versus, if you look at this scheme right here, if we put the deck at this elevation, we stay away from that. Where that person is standing right there, that is the easement. So that way, the utility people, service guys, or even the trash guys who we're going to pick up there, we don't disturb that. We're up and away.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Let me just stop you for a second.
Sure.
That lower level, can you build there as of right, or will you need a variance for that?
We would need a variance for the building coverage with the exercise that Paul and I have done. Because again, with the nonconformity of the building confines, we're up and over with the current zoning laws. So even if we were, the thing is, as
Well,
Fred,
your
You're already at
side yard setback.
66%, you're going to 71%.
Houses.
and I mean, there's several aspects besides zoning, and a lot of it, with this family, they were very proactive. even speaking with the neighbors. As Paul hinted,
Understand what you just said. With those families.
they're very proactive with their
Proactive,
neighbors,
got it.
yes. If we were going to go out and extend that and put, let's say, a fence wall and utilize the space, and as you heard Paul with the parking issue, I mean, it's a parking lot there. Think of this space as a cul-de-sac. For the guy who actually, and one of our neighbors that we did present the plan to, and they're an approximate neighbor, we presented the plan and said, hey, it looks good, just remember my parking, I need to do that turnaround. That we got. We said, okay, we're going to be as sensitive as possible to make sure people could park their car, because in Bronxville, parking is a premium. But we want to have good neighbors, friendly neighbors, but make the best utilization of the space. That's why we were presenting this scheme as our option in terms of utilizing that outdoor space. Next slide, Paul. And again, you have this in your packet. We did measure the site with the surveyor to understand better where our limits and constraints are, and we got that. So we know where things begin and where things end. Next. And then just very quickly, in terms of visuals, this is sort of the master plan of all the housing complexes. We have Beechtree, Kensington, and Sagamore. And in these spots, with this image, there's that service road. You would actually have to come in through Kensington up here to this point. That's where this picture was taken. And then you can see the Sagamore terraces. This and this are the two properties in question. That recessed niche, that's where we're proposing the outdoor deck. From here, looking to the side, you can see the slope conditions, as I was talking about with the parking area and then the adjacent houses. If you're standing on Sagamore, right here, you see this corner of the house is this one right here. You can see a sliver of the rear facade of that space. And then these two images are looking at the property from Sagamore Road. Again, this is peeking in, but there's a lot of sort of green vegetation for privacy purposes. But again, the design wants to maintain a sort of the historical context of nature of the buildings and be very respectful in terms of what William Bates did. And when we're looking at the deck, looking at something, again, when William Bates did these things, architectural components that are very important to him when he did his design was outdoor, space, terraces. Unfortunately, if you look at the master plan of the Sagamore Terrace complex, only the end units have terraces. Over time, they were filled in. People use that for interior real estate. In his original design, he had terraces. The infill units that they owned never had an outdoor terrace. They were only accessible to the common yards in the front. So looking at the scheme that we're proposing, it's the best scenario that we could emphasize in terms of how they could maximize better utilization of outdoor space on the rear. And again, William Bates in his design, he always looked at materials, scale, contextuality, and pergolas. Sort of outdoor trellises. Beechtree used to have trellises along the street, but many years ago, probably 40 years ago, they decided to take it down. That's like taking out the crown jewel of an architectural building. Luckily, I have it. There's some other examples like in Will Circle in Bronxville that they have that piece. But again, if you look at what we were proposing between having this sort of outdoor condition of a terrace plus the trellises above, we think that from an architectural standpoint, it makes a very cohesive gesture that's integrated with the existing context of the buildings. I'm going to wrap up, but John, do you want to say just a couple of quick words?
Let me just introduce myself.
Please.
Since I'm here. Thank you guys for your time and your consideration of this project. So I'm John Campbell. I live at 41 Sagamore with my wife right here, Mosquitoes, and our two kids, James and Katie. Richard and Fred did a nice job, so I'm not going to continue with all of the with everything that they've already said, but really when we thought about this project from the get-go, we wanted to do three things. We wanted to invest in our house, our community, and our family. I think Richard and Fred spoke about the house and the community. So really with our family, all we're really looking to do is have more outdoor space. We have a 7- and a 5-year-old. We want more outdoor space, more sunshine for them to be able to be out there, for us to be out there together. We try our best in the front with the porch, and we do that as a community. But if we can expand that and expand the footprint of our outdoor space, I think that would be amazing for our family. And I think when we looked at some of the letters that came back, there were two things that came up. Fred talked a lot about the privacy piece of it. We're not here to invade anybody's privacy. We're here to add to outdoor space. And the other one was noise. I think we've all been here a long time. I don't think we've had any noise complaints overall, and we're not here to have big parties. Again, we're here to spend some outdoor time with our family. So appreciate your time and your consideration. I want to make it short since you've already heard everything else. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else, any members of the public? We have had some letters in opposition. I don't know if anyone's here that wants to speak to that issue.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Wong. I live on 12 Beech Tree Lane. So in terms of the orientation to the proposed project, the back of my house is perpendicular to the deck that's being proposed, and it's one of the closest properties to the proposed deck. So I certainly understand and empathize with, 41 and 43 in terms of having this private space. I just don't think it's the solution for Bronxville. I think there are probably other ways we can do this, but as you can see from some of the photos that I submitted in my letter of objection, really, there are three key reasons why I oppose this project. The first, it's really just the size and the variance of this proposed project. The second one is privacy. I'll get into some of the details later. And then lastly, it's just the precedence it sets for a village, right? So in terms of the size and variance, look, it is a large, imposing two-story structure. 15 by 37 feet in dimensions. I know there was a number of 10% that was floated around. I think in terms of the footprint of the property, it's actually closer to like 20 or 30%. So we're talking about like a big increase in the footprint of the property. Second, as we know, the setback is already at 11 feet currently. Now with this proposed project, we're really pushing it right to the property lines, like 5 feet. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a project where we're really pushing those boundaries there. I've been in Bronxville for 20 years, and I haven't seen a project for townhomes of this scale. So I think it goes back to the precedents that we may set. And then lastly, I think our townhomes were built with a spirit of not really accommodating such large additions. And, I moved into my space recognizing that I'm not going to make a massive kind of expansion to the footprint of my property. So I think that's just, again, townhomes are of a certain size and dimension for a reason. I think there are certain single property residences that could accommodate such additions. I just don't think for townhomes that's the way it works. Second, on the privacy issue, as I mentioned, my property is one of the closest to the deck. We're really talking about the deck now peering into my bathroom and my son's bedroom. And then kind of really looking down on our sunroom and our dining room. So I know currently we're already close, but this is going to make things even tighter. I mean, as you can see in the back, there's multiple properties sharing that space in the back, and then having this large structure is going to really block sunlight. It's just going to make it even more crowded in the back. And then lastly, in terms of precedents, I read some of the changes in our zoning laws in 2021, and really the intent was to put in place policies to protect and preserve kind of the unique physical characteristics of our neighborhoods. And I just don't see a compelling rationale for why this project would kind of uphold and stay true to those principles. And then I guess lastly, if this project is approved, I do worry, how other townhome owners may respond. We may start to see, a number of projects of this size and scale pop up in the village. And again, it really takes us away from the spirit of our zoning laws that we updated in 2021. So yeah, I mean, in conclusion, really, I do empathize with our neighbors. My objection is to the project, it's not to them. They are great neighbors, and I hope coming out of this, we'll still be able to stay cordial. I just don't think the project it works for our village. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. I am Gabrielle Schooley, and I'm the owner of 5 Kensington Terrace. So the proposed terraces would be jutting toward the Kensington Terrace townhouses. I do not reside in this lovely, small, tightly knit community, but I have visited a number of times, and I absolutely agree with Mr. Wang's sentiments that it's incredible. When I walk up that driveway, people see you, they come out, they chat. It's incredibly neighborhoody, just the way Bronxville is supposed to be. I lived in Bronxville for a number of years before I moved. And the people here, they were wonderful. So absolutely agree. I'm not objecting on the grounds that this is anything personal. I'm just simply concerned that we have our zoning guidance. The variance required in the rear yard is 30 feet. Currently, the buildings are already at 11.4, and we're proposing to go down to 5.3. I'm not sure why this project is being considered. You've already seen through the letters, heard from some of us, and I believe some of you may have already physically taken the time to go there and take a look yourselves.
We always go visit them, all the properties.
we've been-
Okay.
We spent quite a bit of time there the other day.
I think, I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. This is a tremendous variance exception that's being sought. And, I just don't think that's the right place for this space. And I love outdoor dining. I love having outdoor space. I just appreciate that. I said this to Fred. But, I just don't think there's space there. So, for this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Herb Lash. I live at 10 Beech Tree Lane. That's next to Andy. I'm one west of him. So our patio in the back encroaches on or looks out on the reserved strip, which is the private road. First, I wanted to thank very much Richard for all the work he's done on the park in front of Beech Tree Lane. I'm very happy with that. I'm also very happy you included children in your photos. I appreciate that. We have children. My children are long gone, but it's a good, nice touch. I don't understand some of the language that is being used to try to make this project work. As Richard indicated, I don't understand why you could not construct a patio that's at the level of the easement. It would be with the same pillars in the same spots, and yet we're told that cannot be done. I'm not an engineer. I don't know all the details, but it strikes me as odd that that's impossible to do if you wish to build, as Andy says, a two-story structure on the exact same place. So it strikes me as very odd. Language. We're told that this project would have a square footage of less than 10%. It's 233 meters, right? Square feet. That comes out to 2,330 square feet. That means that the project is bigger, not less than 10%. Why do we say it's less than 10%? I don't get the measurement. Maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but it doesn't seem like that math works. What else? You go through they attempt to say that the patios in the back of Beech Tree Lane are elevated. They're not. They're terraces built on the ground. But there's a reference to them as decks. They're not decks. A deck is elevated, like on a ship. Why are we saying that it is a deck? And you go through this language, and I wonder what is being built here. Why are we saying that the privacy is enhanced when I don't see that's the case? One of the letters indicates that because of the columns on the proposed deck, there are 3 columns that will limit and obstruct the line of sight from 41 and 43. I don't believe that's the case. It might limit to a very small degree, but why do we indicate that? Why are we stretching the imagination here? I think I understand what wants to be done here, but why are we trying to say something that's not the case? It's a very large project that will overlook everything else, and it will set a precedent of a deck that is not ground level. That's what I worry about. It's considered just the back space. No, it's an area of 26 townhouses that were built more than a century ago by William Lawrence, who wanted to create a community house. And a community project indicates you know your neighbors. Our passageway on the patios behind allow for people to walk by. Instead of 4 feet or 5 feet, it's 7.5 feet. It's been constructed that way, so you have to know your neighbor. I'm very happy that we get together and meet each other. That would not be the case if it was a 3-foot passageway and you couldn't get by. So it just strikes me, what are we doing here by building something that eliminates having your neighbors stop by? Excuse me for putting it that way. But it seems to me, have we really considered the precedent this will set? And have we really said that it's impossible to build something else? I don't know. I have my doubts. That's, I guess that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd rather not, though, but I will.
Hi, good evening. I am at 20 Beech Tree, but my property, my townhouse faces the beech tree. It's a beech tree, but I'm the part of the Sagamore property, So I'm next to 47 Sagamore. I'm the end unit, so that's the entrance to the common way, to the garbage pickup, et cetera, comes from behind my property, okay? The project is not like putting an umbrella at the ground level that you can take away or do something. It alters permanently the character of the 100-year-old Sagamore townhouse property. It encroaches on others. They are welcome to kind of enhance their property, but not at the detriment of other people, other neighbors. We worry that our property prices will go down because this is gigantic kind of proposal that juts into other people's properties. I don't know if you guys had opportunity to visit the area, but the properties are compact. Ground slopes steeply from Sagamore all the way down to the railroad, so it really decreases the sunlight, the noise level, and just overall, just kind of, it's, I think, unpleasant, unsightly kind of outdoor terrace. It's really not a deck. Deck implies something else. I agree with the neighbor who just spoke earlier. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. So I will propose two variances for two separate projects, although they're the same project. And then I will ask the board for comments and a vote on each, number one and number two, okay? So first, resolved that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Bronxville grant a variance to the owners of 43 Sagamore Road, a rear yard setback required 30 feet, existing rear yard 11.4 feet, proposed rear yard setback 5.3 feet. So the variance required there is 24.7 feet. And this is per Bronxville Municipal Code Section 310.12. Also, building coverage allowed 25%, existing 66%, proposed 71%. Variance required per, again, Municipal Code Section 310.12, 46%. Also, the second one resolved that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Bronxville grant to the owners of 41 Sagamore Road a variance to, number one, rear yard setback allowed 30 feet, existing 11.4 feet, proposed 5.3 feet, and the variance is 24.7 feet. And also, building coverage allowed 25%, again, pursuant to 310.12, both of these are. Existing 66%, proposed 71%, and that is a required variance of 46%. So, with those two resolutions on the table, I'm going to take comments and votes. I'll start with Mr. Jackno.
Yeah, so I definitely understand what you're trying to do, and you know, have been through this before myself. Yeah, I'm really struggling to see why, and I understand it's more complicated and probably a little bit more involved. Why can't something at grade be done? You know, it seems like there could be plenty of space for a common area. Moving condensers, it's probably a lot more involved, I understand that, but I think that would be something that could, you know, I think your neighbors could potentially agree to. So I don't approve.
You're voting no on both variances? Okay. Ms. Regan?
I think you guys probably know we do a five-prong kind of question, and the ultimate outcome being the benefit versus the detriment. And the benefit and the detriment are for you and for your neighbors. You can see a lot of your neighbors are opposed, and I think we can see that the project is large. It seems like a lovely idea for you, but if you have another option, and we didn't hear all the details about maybe doing it at grade level, I think when it's up that high, and we did visit the property, and from their perspective, and it kind of looms over, and it's hard to explain that that's better for their privacy. It certainly doesn't seem that way to me. And it sort of seems like it will be looming over their yards, their houses, et cetera. And I do think both these are kind of substantial. Getting only 5-foot setback gets to be really kind of small. I know they're small and tight areas, so though I respect the idea you want an outdoor space, I know you have a little one in front. If you could do something at grade level, that seems more reasonable to me as well, so I also oppose the variance.
Both.
Both the variances, yeah.
Mr. Brown?
Before I vote, I'd like just to confirm for both applicants that there's nothing unique from one property to the other. Is that correct?
They're twin properties.
Okay, so I do see there's a great value for the applicants. It'll enhance their property, and I can see a great benefit. And when you have to weigh that against the detriment that it would have to the surrounding properties, and when I weigh that, I come down on the side that I do not see how the benefit to the applicants outweighs the detriment to the existing property owners, and I vote against the variance.
Okay. So I'm, obviously, the variances have not carried, but I just want to put my vote on the record or votes on the record, and also provide an explanation of my views on this. We are charged as a board with many different things, but one of those things is to balance, as the other board members have said, the benefit to the applicants against the detriment to the neighborhood and to any nearby properties. And we've heard a lot of objections, legitimate objections. We've heard about noise, we've heard about privacy, we've heard about other, detriments that would occur as a result of this, if this variance were granted. I do think the requested variance is substantial. I think that my personal view is that you may want to and may not have explored fully the other options that you might have for, gaining, some space in the back. So on balance, this is a very tight space. We were back there, and we spent a lot of time back there, and any proposal is going to affect many, many neighbors, and so that really heightens the issue of the neighbors' detriments. And so because of that, and because of all of the neighbors' objections, and for various other reasons, I'm voting no on both variances myself. So the resolutions are not carried, and the variances are not granted in this case.
43.
Okay. Okay.
What do we got next?
So the next application we have is 21 Sunset Avenue. So we will welcome Ms. Marone to the microphone.
Good evening. So you may remember about a year and a half ago, we got a variance for a project to put an addition on 21 Sunset and expand the back of patio deck, which is raised about, in the rear, it's raised about 3.5 feet to 4 feet in the back. So during construction, I did an amendment to change the rear of the deck so that it would be a little wider, and I put the amendment in and had columns. But when the contractor built it, he built it 1.5 feet farther out into the backyard than planned. So we have, there's this corner of the yard, it's only 6.9 square feet. You can see, where's the pointer? Is this a pointer? What's that? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I don't know how to do this thing. Sorry. Yeah. Looks like a pen to me, so.
They just built this?
Oh, okay.
They must be on vacation.
So see this little triangle right there? It's approximately 6.9 square feet. It's 18 foot 6 inches to the property line, and it's supposed to be 20 feet to the property line. You had approved a 20-foot setback. So it's a very small corner, but it does really add a lot to the property. The deck is really nice. I don't know if you went by and saw it, but
I went and looked at it, yeah.
it looks, I mean, it came out great, and they're super happy. And at this point, you know, if they have to remove it, they would, but they'd really like to keep it because it's going to make it an odd shape to the deck.
So you're saying that the contractor just did it bigger? I mean, he just ignored your plans and went a little bigger?
He just went, yeah, he took, I don't know why, he took it out another 18, or a little less than 18 inches, but from what I had originally on, maybe if you go, Paul.
Yeah, we saw the pictures you sent us, right?
Yeah. So originally, it was supposed to go, see the point in the corner?
Yeah.
It was supposed to line up with that, and then he went over that 18 inches, is what happened.
Where is he tonight?
Yeah, I know. Where is he?
No, I'm serious. And where are the homeowners tonight?
The homeowner, he's a doctor, and he's stuck in the city, and she was out of town. So he was planning on being here, but he's had to do surgery, so.
So did you discover this after the fact? I mean, it was done?
Oh, we were getting the C of O, and we got the new survey, and it was.
And found out it was too big?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And the way it was built, if you go to the photographs, Paul, farther down, I mean, it's got lattice around it, so I didn't even, you can't even tell that from the outside that it had been built out that much farther, so I didn't even.
Until you go to measure it, and then you find out it's
know.
just an extra 1.5 feet, okay.
But you can see the little area, I mean, it's a tiny area, but that little area right there.
Right.
So.
Is it because it would have otherwise angled in a weird direction? They decided to just do it? Would it have been weird shaped otherwise?
It was more of a V.
A V, yeah. And
So
they
they
kind of
just kind of
straightened it
widened
out.
it. It's still not square because, but it's more square than. it was.
Closer, that's probably why they did it.
So it makes it a little better for furniture, the way it is
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
I'm not showing up, and the contractor not showing up.
Yeah, that's. anyways.
So you went to get the C of O, and then you found out it was,
Right, so we did get a neighbor from the Galloways behind them, and they have no problem with it. They can't even really see it.
she sent a letter, I saw that, the Galloways, their backdoor neighbors, so they don't care.
They're the only people that could possibly see it.
You can't really, almost nobody can. I went in the backyard today. Dr. Galloway. Yeah. Yeah. They're the only ones, and they said they're fine with it.
Oh, okay, well.
It doesn't look that much closer to the
It's,
property line.
it's still 18 and a half feet.
Yeah, 18.5 versus 20, yeah.
Right, so, and, yeah, and it angled, the rest of the deck, as you can see that line, this is the line of the setback there, that angle.
Yeah.
So it slopes away, it's just that one corner.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? I mean,
I'm just curious again, why did he do it?
the
Sorry?
only innocent person in this whole thing is the one that's hung out to dry here.
Yeah.
Why did he do it? Well, I think what happened, this project took a really long time, and I think what happened, there were changes along the way with other things, and I think they just forgot that they needed a variance in the back. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
What do you think? He just thought it wouldn't matter?
Sorry?
It wouldn't
I would
matter.
have liked to have asked them whether they knew or not.
They did not know.
Oh, the owners didn't know.
Well, let's put it this way. They probably knew at the beginning, but then, again, the project was going on and on. They knew they had the variance in the front, which we had approved, and that was all good.
Right.
But I think the deck, they just kind of weren't thinking about it. So. And I don't think they realized it was a problem to go that distance.
Right. Okay. I don't know, does anybody else have any
I don't
other
have further
questions? Greg, do you have any questions?
No.
Any? Okay.
Self-explanatory.
So let's make a proposal resolution. Resolved that the zoning board of appeals of the village of Bronxville grant a variance to the owners of 21 Sunset Avenue from section 310 9D3 in parentheses. Rear yard required 32, existing 18.6, proposed 13.4, variance requested, well, it's the difference there, it's not here. I'd have to do the math, and I'm not good at math, so.
Foot and a half.
But I think that'll suffice. It's not a significant variance.
No.
Okay, so, Ms.
That's right.
Regan? Yes.
Of course, we don't love the order this happened in, getting a variance on a variance, but I approve it because it is insubstantial and it sounds like a big mix-up to me. And I think if you had come originally and wanted 18.6 versus 20, with that design in mind, we probably would have approved it. So since it is so small, I vote in favor of it.
Mr. Brown?
I think it's de minimis, and I'm in favor of the variance.
I agree, also in favor.
I've made my comments already. I'm sorry you had to go through this, and they left you hanging on the line, but...
Don't go around telling people you can get variances on variances.
Have you been paid, Maggie?
Believe me.
You better make sure of that. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Variance, oh, yes, the variance is granted.
Granted.
You have 1 year to complete, although it's already completed. I know it is.
It's the old ask for forgiveness, not permission, right? It's easier.
That's right.
Beg for forgiveness. Easier than ask for permission.
But they said
Sure.
the address, the mailbox address is at a different location.
This was Sunset.
Okay.
Okay,
This was the fence.
next and last.
Yeah, they switched. Yeah.
Or Westway. To Westway.
4 Westway.
Sure, hopefully not super controversial. But I guess you never know. So we moved to 4 Westway a couple years ago with my wife, Caitlin. We have 3 young boys who are 6, 4, and 2. And
Toward me. Yeah. Oh, did you get
What's that?
everything before?
oh, sure, it's RJ Price. If we own 2 Westway and 4 Westway. And so our address is 4 Westway, but the proposal is for a fence on 2 Westway.
That's the tennis court, right?
Tennis court, yeah, exactly. So it's basically, there's two-thirds of that side is already a solid 6-foot fence, I think from a variance a couple decades ago. In that picture right there, it's a chain link fence. We essentially want to replace it with a 6-foot solid fence that extends what's currently the solid fence, same design, same color, same make, everything. Largely just for safety and privacy, we have the 3 young kids, 2 ways. One, not wanting them to look out onto White Plains Road and want to run out, which has already happened once. And then 2, just to prevent any onlookers kind of on that road, which is dangerous, busy, whatever, seeing our kids playing nearby and wanting to come into the property. So that's kind of, you know, and then the fence is a little bit broken down. That was kind of what caused us to start thinking about it. And, you know, I think probably very similar reasons to many of the properties around us that have solid fences. So that's the largely request. We thought about doing kind of 50% solid picket fence, another chain link fence. We were worried it wouldn't create the safety and privacy concerns that we have for our 3 young kids. So that's, I think, largely it. I think the rough numbers are it's about 58 feet, 59 feet, and the existing portion is a little bit over 100 feet.
Okay. Anyone?
No.
Questions?
No questions.
Okay. So, the last variance of the evening resolved that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Bronxville grant a variance to the owners of 4 Westway, address, I believe, is 2 Westway? Or is it 2 Westway and address is 4 Westway?
Yeah,
2 and 4 Westway.
Address is 4 Westway, 2 Westway, I guess, is the
Got
technical
it.
lot that has
Okay.
the fence.
2 lots. As a variance from Municipal Zoning Code 310-9D4, required 1/2 solid fence, requested full solid fence. Okay, Mr. Brown?
Yes, what the applicant wants to do will definitely provide the continuity with the existing wood fence. And the benefit to the applicant greatly outweighs any detriment to any existing properties in that neighborhood. So I'm in favor of the variance.
Mr. Jackdown?
I agree and approve.
Ms. Regan?
I approve too.
Yes, I think it'll
Speaks for itself.
actually improve the look of it. It's certainly better than the chain link fence. I understand the issues with White Plains Road and the noise and all of that, so I would vote in favor of the variance. So it's carried and approved.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.